Have you ever wondered why autism seems so common in people? It's a huge puzzle that scientists have been trying to crack for decades. Well, a new study out of Stanford might have just found a major piece of that puzzle, and the answer is hidden deep in our evolutionary past. So let's get into it.
All right, so to really get this, we have to start here. Researchers have suspected for a long time that conditions like autism are, in a lot of ways, a uniquely human thing. Why? Because they often touch on the variabilities that make us, well, us. Things like our super complex language or our ability to guess what someone else is thinking. You know, that thing scientists call theory of mind.
And this leads to this really fascinating, almost unsettling question. What if the very evolutionary upgrades that gave us our amazing brains also came with a kind of built-in vulnerability? Could the secret to our strength also be the source of a weakness? That's the exact idea that the team at Stanford decided to investigate. Now, to solve this very human mystery, the scientists had to do something kind of counterintuitive. They had to zoom way out. They figured they first needed to find a general rule for how all brains evolve, not just ours. Because if they could find that universal rule, they could then look to see how, and more importantly, why, the human brain is the one that breaks it.
And their approach was it was brilliant. They made an analogy to something we already understand pretty well in evolution. They said, okay, think of the brain as a whole organism. And if you do that, then all the different types of neurons inside it are kind of like the different proteins that make up a cell.
See, with proteins, there's a simple rule. The ones you have the most of are usually the most important. So evolution puts them under lock and key. They change very, very slowly. The researchers bet the same would be true for neurons. The most common neuron types, they should be the most stable. They called this new idea the abundance principle. And this chart here lays out the logic perfectly. On the one hand, you have the really common neurons. If they change, it has a huge impact on the whole system, so there's a lot of pressure to keep them the same. The result? They evolve slowly. On the other hand, the rarer neurons, well, changing them is less risky, there's less constraint, so they can evolve a lot faster. Makes sense, right? A simple, elegant rule. But is it actually true? Oh yeah, it was true. The team looked at a massive amount of data, over 1 million neurons from 6 different species, focusing on the neocortex, the thinking part of the brain. And the pattern was just undeniable. Everywhere they looked, the abundance principle held up. It seems to be a real, solid rule for brain evolution.
I mean, listen to how the researchers themselves put it. A strikingly consistent relationship. This wasn't just a fluke. They had stumbled upon what looks like a brand new, fundamental rule of biology, a basic principle for how all brains change over millions of years. But, and this is a huge but, this is where our scientific detective story takes a massive plot twist. After finding this beautiful rule that works across the animal kingdom, they found one single glaring exception: us. As soon as they zoomed in on the human branch of the evolutionary tree, right after we split off from chimpanzees, that beautiful pattern just shattered. It turns out the human brain is a real rule breaker. And this chart just shows it so clearly. It's looking at the most common neuron in our cortex, this L2/3 IT neuron, which is super important for complex thought. Now, look at the chimp lineage. It evolves slowly, just like the rule says it should. But then look at the human lineage. Whoa, its evolution just went into hyperdrive. Let me just say that again, because it's the core of the mystery. The one neuron that should have been the most stable, the most carefully preserved, was actually the one that changed the fastest in our entire lineage. It didn't just bend the rule, it completely smashed it.
So that immediately begs the next question, right? Was this a bug, or was it a feature? Did evolution just accidentally take its foot off the brake, letting random changes pile up? Or was this on purpose? Was evolution slamming on the gas pedal, actively driving these changes because they gave us some kind of advantage? And the evidence here was just crystal clear. Think about it. If the changes were just an accident, you'd expect to see a lot of variation in these neurons between you, me, and everyone else. But what the scientists found was the total opposite. These neurons have the least amount of genetic variability of any neuron type in humans. That's not an accident. That is the telltale signature of what's called positive selection. Evolution was pushing for this change, and pushing hard. Okay, so if evolution was doing this on purpose, what was it actually changing? This is where we get to the climax of the story, and the answer is, well, It's pretty mind-blowing.
So the researchers went deeper, right down to the genetic level. They looked at these fast-evolving neurons and asked, okay, which genes are being messed with here? Is their activity, their expression, being turned up or turned down? And here it is, the bombshell. The genes that are most strongly linked with autism spectrum disorder, they were 4 times more likely to be turned down in human neurons compared to the same neurons in chimpanzees. The big evolutionary change that made us human involved systematically dialing down the volume on autism-related genes.
And they proved this wasn't just some weird environmental thing. They did this incredibly clever experiment in the lab where they confirmed that even in a controlled petri dish, the human versions of these genes were just quieter. The change is hardwired directly into our DNA. It is definitive proof of positive selection at work. So once you put all these clues together, a powerful new idea takes shape, and it explains this whole mystery as a kind of evolutionary trade-off. It's called the closer to the edge hypothesis. It basically goes like this. Step 1. Our ancient ancestors had high expression of these genes, way far away from any kind of risk. Step 2. Evolution starts pushing that expression level down, probably because it gave us some amazing new ability, like language. Step 3. Now, today, the new normal for all humans is a baseline level that is much, much closer to a potential risk threshold for autism. So you see the trade-off. The benefit was absolutely massive. We're talking about enhanced cognition, language, maybe even consciousness itself. But there was an unintended cost. The entire human species was shifted to have a higher underlying susceptibility to autism. It means that small genetic tweaks that wouldn't even register in a chimp could be enough to push a human over that line. And I really can't overstate how big a deal this is. Scientists have had this hunch for a long, long time that becoming human came with new kinds of health risks. But the proof was always hard to find. This study? It's the strongest direct evidence we have ever seen that the evolution of our unique brain also, at the same time, rewired our vulnerability to certain conditions. Which leaves us with one last really big thought to chew on. If our incredible minds came with this kind of price tag, it just makes you wonder, what else about being human is a trade-off? Our ability to walk on 2 legs, our complex societies, our long lives? What hidden costs might be attached to them that we are only just now beginning to understand?